I was very good friends with Gary Waite. At the time, he was the head pro at the university club, and I had chronic fatigue, and I was back in Australia at the time. I was maybe 2 years on the singles tour. Got to top 50, and then had this thing going, which not too many people really knew about. 20 years ago. So I actually reached out to Gary via fax. This is before email, ironically enough, and sent him a fax just to sort of get some inspiration, because I really liked how he sort of handled himself on the singles tour, softball, singles hardball, and the doubles hardball. And I trained with him a bunch up in Canada, and he stayed with them and hung out with his family and stuff. So I felt a pretty good connection with him. So I just sort of wanted some inspiration, because I was literally sleeping 15 hours a day back home, and I was on disability benefits, and I'd left school, and sort of put all my eggs in one basket kind of thing. And so send this long-winded facts about how I admired him and all this kind of stuff. And typical Gary fashion, I don't hear anything back for 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And it's I spilled my guts to you. You've got nothing to say about it. And then a couple of weeks goes by, and he's just he writes in the fax, he's like, call me, I've got a job. And I was like, a job? I was like, do you really, I'm sleeping 15 hours a day, I can't even train, what do you mean a job? So he's like, and so we spoke, and I was like, he's like, well, you got nothing really to lose, right? Jump on a flight and come over, and if it doesn't work out, then you should go back to Australia, Gary was one of my biggest mentors, I think. Back when we played together, the power was actually a very big part of the game. And most probably in a different way now, because with so much power, if you keep on using it, people start getting a little bit immune to it. But it was sort of back in the day when it was still sort of moving the ball around, and people didn't really maybe necessarily hit the ball that hard. And then when myself and Gary came on board, then we really started ramping up, and we literally overpowered teams, for years, straight, until guys started getting a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, started handling the pace better. Then just sort of start mixing up a little bit more. So I played with Gary for 6 years. I think we had 3 undefeated seasons in the 6 years, 2 back-to-back. We had 2 years that we didn't lose, which was pretty crazy back then. Every time that I played with him, I sort of learned something different, or I sort of found out more about myself, or more about us as a team. And that was kind of a cool experience to sort of just keep on growing and sort of being there firsthand in the front lines and growing with it. And he was such a tenacious competitor. He just didn't back down, and he was very physical, very mentally strong. You knew that you had to be out there for at least 2 hours, if not 2.5 hours, to even have a chance, of beating him. And everyone knew that. And then I sort of came on with him, and I was pretty tenacious as well. So, most teams basically just almost lost it, right? They were going for too much, and they were going for some shots they weren't there, so they were making a lot of unforced errors, and almost gave us the points a lot of the time, because they just didn't want to be out there for that long. So it definitely became a bit of a game of attrition that we had as a backup plan, I think. And then so that was mostly 8 years. So that was 2 years with Ken and 6 years with Gary, and then changing from Gary to Victor was mostly one of the biggest transitions, I think. Going from right wall to left wall. I honestly believe that I didn't think I'd be able to win an event, and that's God's honest truth. I was I was getting a little bit bored on the right wall. I wasn't really training. I wasn't really thinking about it. It wasn't really on my mind. I was just sort of going out there and just sort of, we're obviously winging it, but I wasn't really I was enjoying it, but not. I wasn't really challenged anymore. So that's why I sort of had a difficult conversation with Gary, because breaking up that partnership was a tough one. But I was excited about playing with Victor, and Victor was excited about playing with me. And actually, and our very first tournament was last weekend at Wimbledon that we ever won together, and that was quite a highlight. I was proud of myself that I could go from both walls and win at the highest level. And Victor's great. He's a very entertaining, a very exciting player. To play with and to play against. He pulls out shots everywhere. He's very quick. He's very experimental, and he's very, very talented. So we had an absolutely fantastic 3 years together. And then he wanted to sort of take a bit of a break, from doubles. And so I'd pretty well achieved basically everything that I wanted to achieve at that stage anyway. And I was I wouldn't have been happy about it, but I was kind of fine sort of retiring if that was the case. And the only guy that I wanted to play with, was Ben, but he was playing with Paul Price. So now obviously a very good team. So I made the call to Ben, and I was just like, hey Ben, I was like, I know that you're playing with with Paul, but I'm not playing with Victor anymore, and I'd love to play with you. And so that was a pretty difficult decision for him, I think. I don't think Paul took it too well, but obviously he made the decision, and I think it's been great. We're best of friends, and I've been very good friends, with the whole three partners, and that's I think one reason why we've been so successful. He got a little bit late to start in squash than what I did, so he started when he was maybe 10 or 12, and I started when I was maybe 7. So he was like a little bit sort of weaker ranked, in the juniors, and I don't know if you know it now, but I was a bit of a bully. So I'd sort of beat up on him a lot, and he had dreadlocks and stuff, and I'd call him Dreads, and he's got these like pointy things on his shoulders, so I'd call him like a wire coat hanger, and I beat him up a bit. So we actually weren't really mostly that close of friends at the beginning, because I was just so mean to him, and I was bigger than him, so I'd like beat him around and muscle him around a bit. And then so he reached out to me like I reached out to Gary, as like a bit of a mentor, and I had to sort of change things around and stuff. And I was like, you know what? I was like, the best thing that ever happened was that I came over to New York. Got a different scenery. The guys were sort of open to sort of taking care of me, and just having just like a breath of fresh air was like a good sort of kickstart to sort of help you just sort of move on a bit. So he asked me, he's like, literally, what shall I do? And I was like, come over, grab any job you can grab, and just come over, because that'll be the best thing that you can ever do. And so lo and behold, he came over, and he got a job at the Heights Casino. He worked there for a couple of years, and then he started playing some dubs, and then slowly but surely he got over his chronic fatigue as well. So we've actually had very, very similar sort of transitions in life. It's been great, it's going to be really sad, women that play together. But he's just, he's just like a solid guy, and he's always got my back. I've always got his back. He's very, very busy with his sort of family, so we're in sort of different stages of our lives with that. And it's a little bit sad that we don't get to hang out as much as what we would maybe like to, because of mostly more because of his commitments with his family and stuff, and being in Boulder and traveling back and forwards. But it's been a fantastic road. It really has. All this, obviously the squash will be here and is here, and it'll be here when we're gone. But our relationship, and my relationship with Victor and Gary, they're the things that actually are the most important things. In all this, that you can compete with someone at the highest level in a sport, be super successful with someone who's like your best friend. And that's how I've viewed Ben. So it's been quite a ride.